Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in today. Welcome to It's Time for More Injury Funding podcast for all who want to learn about legal funding and its significance in the personal injury, medical malpractice, trucking law, workers' compensation, rideshare, and many other types of law practice domains. I'm your host, Laura, founder and CEO of More Injury Funding, the legal funding counselors with passion for law, medicine, legal funding, and heart for all suffering individuals. In today's episode, I have an honor to be talking to attorney Jim Paisley, founder and managing partner of Paisley Law, LLC, with an office in Midtown Atlanta, Georgia. Well, actually, not Midtown, it's Decatur, isn't it, Jim?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, we moved.
So today we'll be discussing the good, the bad, and the garbage firms navigating injury law with Jim, because he is an expert in this field, so he can offer some really amazing tips, for other attorneys and of course for our clients or maybe clients to be who are listening today. At the end of our episode, I prepared a fun pop question for our guests, so stay tuned. Welcome to my show, Jim.
Thank you, Laura.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, great to be here. And I love the topic, garbage firms. And I told you I wanted to keep it real and but also keep it kind of light and fun and in sort of a dark way as well. So I think it's maybe good for people to know like what to stay away from it. It'll be a fun topic. I can't wait. Yeah, I can't wait for these questions.
Well, let's jump right to it. Jim, can you give our listeners and viewers a brief overview what injury law entails and why it's so important for everyday people?
I think us injury lawyers, I think what we are in our best circumstance with, in our most ideal form and in our purest form of what we're doing for people, we are the gatekeepers against corporations for individuals. So we represent the little man against the powerful and the people that would otherwise overrun them. And, if they want to stand up to us, we can stand up to them and we can go get 12 jurors on our side and we can say, all right, we can hold you accountable. Mm-hmm. And so without our system of our civil justice system of what we have in this country, thank God to our founding fathers, I think what we have here would look a lot different. So whether it be safety, whether it be accountability for insurance companies, I could go on. Mm-hmm. So that's what we do for injury law or injury clients. When somebody is hurt, we hold those accountable and we hold their feet to the fire and make sure that people get what they deserve.
And before we jump to the next question, why don't we do a little cheers? So Jim was so kind. He brought Prosecco, a very special Prosecco to today's show. It's our first Prosecco in our show. And so it's go. Hopefully it will flow smoothly. Okay, cheers to everybody.
Cheers. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, Jim, not many people talk about the dark side of the law industry. We often hear about the runners in the industry law world or injury law world. Can you explain who they are and why they are considered part of the underbelly of this field?
I think first, when people hear that term runner, what is a runner? So let's define what a runner is. A runner is a person that goes out. So when somebody's been involved in an accident, there is a runner, somebody who works distantly at an arm's length, maybe for an injury firm. And they will go out there and they will find an injured person in their weak moment. It might be the hospital. It might be they might have scanned police reports and they might have gone through those and found the number and contact information. They might get on the phone and they might call you and say, hey, you've been in this terrible accident. Let us help you. I'm sorry. They usually say, let us make you a lot of money and capitalize on the situation. That is a runner, somebody who does that. Mm-hmm. Okay. So number one, it's illegal. Number two, you're encountering people in some of the darkest and most terrible moments of their life. So it's offensive. It's disgusting. And like I said, it is illegal. So Georgia came out. We thought we had this cutting edge statute probably 6 or 8 years ago where we said, we're going to illegalize runners. We're going to make it a crime to approach people for 30 days after their accident. So, but I think runners stopped for 1 week. Mm-hmm. That's what. Great. How are they going to catch us? And so what they did is they made themselves more concealed and harder to catch. So they still do it all. Now they're cloaked as different companies. They say they're not associated necessarily with law firms. There's many ways that they're hidden now, but they're still out there. They're still slithering among us.
Very
Yeah.
interesting. So
Yeah.
do they get information feeded from police report from police department?
I think there's a few ways. There's three ways that I know of for sure. Okay. They're literally crawling around the hospital. Okay, but they're not attached to specifically any law firms. They might contract with law firms, and then those law firms, I mean, they know who they are. The other thing I see is their runners are specifically driving around late at night or wherever with crash or with police scanners in their car. I know this because my car was totaled in front of my house. I wasn't in the car. My car was totaled in front of my house. I was playing the piano with my son. Okay. And I hear this, what sounded like a cascade of like a champagne glasses falling and everything. I was like, that was my car. Okay.
Wow.
And so I go look at my car. It's in the front yard of my neighbor's. And there's a guy in the middle of the street. He hit my car, and I felt bad for him. He wasn't drunk or anything. He just wasn't paying attention. But I was not in the car. I was not injured. But anyway, I'm out there. Police come. And then this guy comes out of nowhere, and he says he doesn't know that I wasn't in the car. But he walks up to me. He says, "Hey, man, I can get you a lot of money for you." I'm just like, and I'm an injury lawyer, so I'm like, wait. I'm like, oh yeah, tell me more. Tell me more.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm like, come on, tell me more. He tells me all about like what he does, and he works with a law firm. I said, what law firm is that? He gives me her name. It's not a real name for a law firm. I said, okay. And then I was like, by the way, man, I wasn't in the car. He said, okay, have a good night. And then I said, wait, come back. I was like, you're a runner, aren't you? He's like, he starts smiling. He's like, yeah, man, are you a lawyer? I'm like, yeah, I'm a lawyer. He's like, dude, you can work together. And I was like, you're gonna forget. And I was like, no, get away.
That's insane.
But he told me each lawyer $1,500 for each case they signed up. He told me his pricing tag, $1,500. And I was like, and I got to think the cost of acquisition on a personal injury case, $1,500. That's pretty cheap. If I go look at what I would, if I was to pay into this whole marketing thing that we all do, if I was to pay in and I knew that I was going to pay $1,500 for every case that I got, I would pay that. But there's no way in hell I'll sell my soul and pay for a run. So there's no way. Oh yeah, and I can lose my bar license for it too.
Yeah,
so.
I'm glad you're doing the right thing. Absolutely. And hopefully most, if not any attorneys do that.
I talk about the third way. I think they get, and I think there is some access that people get. I don't know, it's police officers, whatever it is. They get access to all police records, all accident cases, and they, as they come through, I think they get on there and they just cold call folks, and every person, every family or friend I know that's gotten in an accident, they'll get phone calls days later, like 2-3 days later. They'll say, "Hey, I heard you in an accident. We're going to get you a lot of money and all that." And through a few circumstances, I've been able to find out which law firms those are, and at least a couple of them. Yeah.
Wow, scary.
So that's what runners are. That's what they do.
Good to know. So here we get a good definition of the runner. Now we know. So Jim, you mentioned to me earlier the other day the garbage firm experience. Recently, you took over a case from a firm that didn't prioritize client communication. What signs should clients look for when choosing a law firm, a good, reliable, honest law firm?
I wrote a blog post on some of the 10 questions you should ask before hiring a lawyer, and maybe that expands it too much. I think, the biggest complaint that any lawyer ever gets, if you go to the Georgia Bar Association, their ethical practice for whatever that division is, and I don't know, I'm not too familiar with them. I haven't had much involvement with them. So, but if you ask anyone down at the bar, what is their biggest complaint? They will say it is a lack of communication from lawyers to their clients. Okay. So, and I told myself when I became a lawyer that I would never be in that situation. So, I think number one, the biggest question is, how do I talk and communicate with a lawyer that is handling my case? I think that is it. And so if you ever hear anything where they say, well, you don't really need a lawyer at this point in the case. I'm like, that's bullshit. You do. And I'm about to tell you why about that garbage firm experience. You absolutely need a lawyer because there's just certain things. I mean, I had my last paralegal was with me for 11 years.
Nice.
My primary paralegal right now, Michelle, she's been with me for 3 years. Sorry, 2 years. Even though she knows so much and everything, there are just, unless you're in there reading the case law and you're going to all the CLEA and you're talking to trial lawyers and seeing what happens in trial law. I mean, there's things that you will miss that are so relevant to just the run of the mill part of the case that can make the difference between literally 7 figures. Absolutely. So I think it's one of those things. How will I communicate with a lawyer? I think that's the biggest thing. So if a lawyer out there says, well, you can call me on the cell phone or you can text me anytime, that's a great sign.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that's every lawyer. I mean, I'm sorry. Every client gets my cell phone number, paralegal cell phone number. They can reach us anytime.
That's wonderful. That's the way to go. That's the way to do business.
Yeah.
Jim, you alluded to discovering significant policy limits that the previous firm missed.
Oh, yeah.
What's the most common oversight you see firms make that could cost clients money, a lot of money?
I would say this. Number one, the oversight would come from lawyers not looking at the case. And I would say just that, leaving money on the table, not understanding what the exposure and how much money can be recovered from the other side. And that was exactly the issue with the other firm. Let's put it in the context. So uninsured motorist coverage. So multiple in this specific accident, there's multiple parties. I'm sorry, there's a woman, she's pregnant with twins. Right? Pregnant with twins is, most people know, you're a mother, you know this, pregnant with twins, that is automatically a high risk pregnancy, right? So all these are treated, with great care and everything. So she's rear-ended bad. I mean, her rear bumper wound up basically in the backseat, okay? And so she's 23 weeks pregnant with twins, and that it's going to bed rest for the next 8 weeks. Until 32 weeks.
More or less. I forgot it's been a while.
The twins were born. They're just over 3 pounds. They're premature. They're in the hospital for a month. The bills are massive. And before this, there were no contractions. There were no other interventions that were made. But this wreck clearly led to the cascade of interventions that eventually led to the premature birth of these twins. So, you've basically got easily a 6-figure case. You've got premature babies that have heart problems now. They could have the rest of their life. I mean, this is definitely, as I said, at least 6 figures. So you need, every stone has to be uncovered. Okay?
Absolutely.
So one of those is, of course, we look at liability. Liability was small. I think the person that had them only had something like $60,000 coverage. They paid that immediately. And then the other law firm had demanded her insurance limits of underinsured coverage limits worth, they maxed out at $300,000. At $300,000, it's great. But one of the first things I said to the client, after she fired that firm, I said, wait a second. And she fired the firm because they never called her. She never once spoke. She'd been with the firm for 4 months. They never once spoken to her. She'd never had one conversation with a lawyer, not even on intake or anything like that. So I said, what policy is this that your car was insured with? She said, State Farm. I said, State Farm. I said, you're married? I said, yes. How many cars do y'all drive? She said, I drive 2 cars. I said, are 2 cars driven under the same policy? She says, yes. I said, State Farm. I said, so guess what? Your lawyer demanded $300,000. Your insurance policy is actually worth $600,000 because there's a stackable policy here. Yeah. So I was like, and this is simple. This is stuff most paralegals. This law firm, again, if a lawyer was looking at this case, I know of that lawyer. I don't think his legal mind is that poor. I think he would have known this. He would have. I know that, but he never looked at the file, and so we took over the case. We withdrew the previous demand that was done, and of course, we're going to redo everything. where, doubt that this is going to be a policy limits case, but 600 last I checked is greater than 300. So that's something that's a very simple oversight. That's why I need lawyers looking at your case. There you go.
Okay, so if you need good lawyer, we have one right here. We'll share the contact information later at the end of our show. Legal terms can be very confusing. Can you help us break down some common terms related to injury law that clients should understand?
I remember when I bought a house for the first time in 2007, and ready to sale, these was like prime and whatever, and I had no idea what it meant. I was just got out of law school, and I didn't know what it meant. So, as a lawyer, I've always tried to I always tell people, like, if I'm mansplaining something you already know, you got to tell them. Like I remember I had this client for a long time, and then eventually she tells me, and I'm explaining these medical procedures to her like she's an idiot. Then she tells me she tells me in her previous career she was an LPN, former nurse. So she basically knew everything I was talking about the whole time, and
she was just super polite.
She was being very humble. It's like you're so anyway, but I would say this: the biggest thing is understanding what we are all dealing with every day, and of course, when we talk about defendant, talk in terms of liability, and we talk about who these parties are. So I mean, I would say let's keep it simple. We'll talk over. We'll say, okay, from the liability carrier, we're going to go do this. Liability carrier. What the hell does that mean? Liability carrier is your defendant, the policy from which we are going after them. From there, I will talk a lot about if they don't do what they're supposed to, then we could have a bad faith action against them. That basically means if they are not going to negotiate with us the way they should, or they don't pay us within the policy limits when they should, then we can go. And that's all bad faith means. It's real simple. There's first and third party bad faith. I don't think I need to get into all that, but bad faith just means insurance companies behaving bad. That's all that means. And then, or not doing what they're supposed to do. And then every other term that I tend to talk over people's heads a little bit is when I talk about underinsured motorist coverage versus underinsured motorist coverage. And that just talks about your own policy and what you have there to protect yourself when the person that hit you is not covered like they should be. So, and I will say this as a public service, if there's nothing else anybody gets from this podcast, I would say everybody call up your insurance agent right now, max out your underinsured motorist coverage, make it add-on coverage, not reduced by, not traditional, make it add-on coverage, at least $250,000, $500,000.
Yes, do that to protect yourself. Yeah. If not yourself, your family.
Your family, because I don't know that. Okay, I think I looked at this. I did look at this the other day. I wanted to know because I was giving a talk on insured motorist coverage. And I think I read that 14% of drivers in the metro Atlanta area don't even have insurance.
Interesting.
14%. That's scary, right?
That is a high number.
And in some cases, depending where you are in Atlanta, it could be as high as 19%. So, yeah, max that stuff out, man. This is one of these idiots that they plow in you, man. I mean, just one trip to Grady. If you go into Grady and you say that your head hurts and you say your abdomen feels a little funny, guess what they're going to do? They're going to run 5 CT scans on you, and you're going to have a $40,000 hospital.
And I'm very familiar, Jim, with Grady because I spent 11 years in the medical field, and two of those years I worked with Grady.
What did you do in the medical field?
Surgical ICU and emergency room.
You're a nurse?
1 year each.
What'd you do?
I did my pre-medical. So I was, studying my pre-medical to change from what I was doing in the past, but volunteer and get some extra hours. So for 2 years. Yeah. So yeah. So once you had worked at Grady's emergency room, we used to say in medical field, you've seen everything, literally. So it's a very good hospital, but it is not cheap. Like an air at the hospital, one of the best trauma hospitals in Southeast, by the way.
That's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Let's talk for a minute about the partner lawyer dilemma. You hinted at firms where partner lawyers might not be as involved. How does this impact clients, and what should they expect from their attorneys?
There is this movement, I think, going through small law firms, and I think it's meant to be very good. Okay, but there is this movement of small law firms of running your firm like a corporation or like a business, which I think is that's good. I mean, you should know your accounts receivable, you should know your balance sheet, and you should know your pipeline, and you should make sure you're being profitable, and you shouldn't be hiring staff that you can't pay for, or leasing Range Rovers, and I don't know, doing all kinds of stupid shit that some people do. And you should make sure that yes, you are being accountable and running your law firm in an optimal way. But a lot of these there's a lot of consulting firms out there that are now running their things on, remember, because like you went into law because you wanted to help people, and just go to Barbados, or something like that. So there is a sort of movement, I think, in law, and I've seen it. And I was a member of one of these groups for 18 months, and I did it because I wanted to wrap my head around accounting, cash flow, and understanding those things better. And it was good in some respects, but the more I got into the culture, the more I realized it's like, okay, I think the only way that they see to replace themselves so the lawyers don't have to do anything. Okay. And that's what I think. And when the few times that I've expanded and gotten bigger, I've got 3 people working for me right now. Okay. But I've expanded, and every time I expand, I do not enjoy it. Okay. I start to think of people more as numbers and less as people. I start to think less of their injuries and their families than I do. Less about that than I do like how much money are we going to make on this case, and what's my overhead and stuff like that. I don't want to think about like having $100,000 of overhead every month.
Yes,
that's insane. So it's like, what if I can get to know every single client and get to know their case, their families, and what they're going through, and I can get the best result for them, but also like still have a good life and not miss my kids' school functions and all that. What if you can do both? Have a good business, but still get to know people, but still be hands-on involved and all that. So I think the question was the partner lawyer dilemma and people that are too hands-off. I think that garbage law firm, I think they were well-meaning, okay? But I think they just took it too far. I think they had hired paralegals to run their law firm. And again, what I said earlier, you need lawyers for a law firm. Right? I think there's too many legal issues that could come up. And so what I noticed there was, I think the partner, one of the partners was on paternity leave for 11 months. And that's great. 11 months is a long time. But, and then the other lady, she was gone. And so I don't know. I think they said that they hadn't seen him for 3 months, and she was on a 2-month honeymoon or something. So,
oh wow,
I love that.
So it sounds like European model to me.
She called themselves. No, but like I said, people hire you, they think you. So I think they need to get to know you a little bit, and you need to be reachable, and you need to be approachable. Yeah, that's it. That's the problem with, I think, these things is it preaches too much replace yourself and let all this administrative staff run it for you. But I don't think, how much does your administrative staff respect you when you're not there?
When you're away.
But by the way, yeah, keep working hard, guys. I'm in Costa Rica.
Yeah, usually that not so much.
Yeah,
From my experience. Sure. Thinking about client relationships, how important it is for clients to have direct communication with their lawyer. Any funny or surprising anecdotes from your experience?
Okay, yes, I think that's kind of like everybody. I'd say a really funny experience. I remember my 3rd child was born, and of course I'm in the hospital, but I'm kind of I look at and so baby's born. I think it had been probably 6 hours since the baby was born, and then finally I get to hold the baby. I had talked, and then I'm just like, I'm talking to him, but I'm also talking to my baby. I think I accidentally in that conversation, I think I wound up baby talking the client. So just because just going to and from. So
That's what I was.
That was a baby delivery client conversation.
I probably would do the same thing if I were in your shoes. I would have done exactly the same thing. So don't feel bad or don't think you're crazy. You're normal. You good crazy. That's a good thing. What's one of the biggest lessons you've learned, from dealing with cases that come from firms with questionable practices?
It's a simple lesson, and it's not that hard. It's really not that hard to outperform them. And it's almost when they come from those firms, they come to me, they think I'm like the savior of personal injury. They're like, I hear it over and over. And it's not like I used to be like, oh, thank you. Like, I didn't know lawyers actually talk to people and everything. It's like, you're so humble. I'm like, what? Like, again, the lawyers that I hang around, this is how they run their practice. This is what they do. So this is not abnormal to me, but it's normal to them. When they come to me and they're like, I never spoke with them. They never had anything to do with my case. And then to me, it's so easy to outperform them with either diligence, explaining things. I've had so many calls where in 5 minutes they say, you just explained 10 times more to me than I learned in 3 months of working with that other law firm. And I do want to say this, Laura, I not to take other people's cases. And I've my entire career, I've taken less than 10 cases from other law firms. When they usually, in the case I was telling you about, when they called me, the first thing I said to them, I don't want your case. If a demand's already gone out, you need to stay with them. You need to stay with them. The first thing they said was, who? Like, I've never spoken to them. I'm like, okay, tell me more. Because that's one thing that really just grits me. If I've never spoken to them, then maybe like something. I feel like I have an ethical duty at least to listen to them. Then they told me to think about their state farm policy. And then when I told them that, I was like, you probably could stay with them and you'd be okay. They'd be like, well, if they didn't know this, then I'm not going to stay with them.
Vanity.
Yeah.
Let's lighten up the mood here for a change and then talk about fun legal myths. What's the most bizarre myth, Jim, you've heard about injury law that you would like to debunk?
Or ambulance chasers? But I just thought, I began the whole discussion with or runners. Like, those guys are ambulance chasers. So is it that much of a myth? And so I was like, man, so it's like, I don't know. People, there's a lot. I would tell her, first of all, I'd like to think that most of us are good guys. Most of us, and they do this. All the people that I hang around, again, George Trollo is exceptional.
Amazing, yes. I love our detailing.
It's the best fraternity in the world. Yes. We fight for people every day, and we all act as if we're a 2,000 person law firm. I love us wholeheartedly, but sit down with me, just, oh, cool, you're an ambulance chaser. And they'll just say that just so comfortably. Then I'm like, fuck you. I don't say that, but I'm like, fuck you. But I get it. I look at all the billboards, I look at the commercials, I hear the runner stories. I get it. Guess what? Look, there's a lot of ambulance chasers. Fair enough. But I try to listen to them. They say you're an ambulance chaser, and they think that's funny. And it's like, yeah, it's like, so what? They're like, what do you like about being an ambulance chaser? I told this one guy, it's like, what I like about what I love about what I do is getting to meet people at one of the worst moments in my life. And then we get to take this ride together where I get to be a small part of fixing that or putting that on a better road. And I get to either hold their hand, show them how we're going to get through this. It's like, just follow them. And, I get to navigate that path forward. So the myth is, and, when I told this guy that, he was like, dude, I'm I'm sorry, I can't believe I said that. I've never actually heard that explanation. You blew my mind. Like, I mean, that's what we do.
But it's
cool.
not so bad. I have a shirt, long sleeve shirt, which I love. One of my favorites. Attorneys give me a license. I do legal funding nationwide. I have a lot of shirts and t-shirts, long sleeve, short sleeve, you name it. But one of my favorites, can't think of the name of the attorney, but it says ambulance chasers. It was 5K for his wife. She has a condition, so he's been doing this 5K for several years, and I missed unfortunately this year, but I'm definitely.
It's a 5K.
Yeah, it's amazing, beautiful, and so I'll send you the info on that. But so it says on the back, ambulance chasers, and it's soft cotton. I love it. I use it. I'm with that shirt all the time. It's just amazing, and I don't mind.
Why not embrace it?
Exactly.
Why not embrace it?
So Jim, if somebody is injured and is looking for representation or maybe has questions for you, what fun tips can you share for navigating their choices?
I thought of this today when I was driving into work because I was thinking about this podcast, and I was just like, people looking for a lawyer, what should they think about? And I've only thought about this because of I talked to another paralegal that was recently fired from one of these crap law firms, and she talked about how law firms some of these firms will just nickel and dime you to death. They say their fee is a third or 30%, 33 to 30%. This litigation it's more, but there's also other expenses and fees and other expenses. And so I want to know there's two things if you're navigating your choices. So the things you need to know is, number one, of course, is your lawyer going to be reachable? Are you going to be able to talk to your lawyer? That's number one, the biggest thing. The second thing beyond that, and I just thought of this and I thought of it, I went in down I had to slam on my brakes because I was about to hit the car in front of me. But anyway, I just turned to the side. I was like, what if you asked a lawyer? I would do it. If they asked me for a redacted settlement statement for one of my clients, so there's no confidential information in there, you know what I mean? But it just showed what all the line items were of what the lawyer gets and what the client gets. Because what's $1 million case if they have to pay back $1 million to doctors, lawyers, lien holders, lawyer expenses, and all that? And there's it's $500 for you have $1 million case and maybe the client gets 20,000. Well, that's terrible, right? That doesn't make any sense, right? But you see that on billboards, $3 million for an injury. Well, what did we have to pay back? What did the client get? So navigating choices. How will I reach my lawyer? And the other thing is, what does the client get? I also think a big thing is, I saw Alex Wen. He's one of my other favorite trial lawyers. He had this Instagram thing. He's like, "Is your lawyer stealing from me?" He looked right at the camera and said, "Is your lawyer stealing from me?" I love that. I was like, and he said, "Is your lawyer taking more money from the closing table than you?" And I'm like, "That's great. I love." And we have that policy as well, of course. We never take more money than our client gets, and even if we have to reduce our fee, because what if you're limited by policy limits, right? And then there's a lot of injuries, a lot of debt, a lot of medical expenses, and you got to reduce your fee to make sure the client gets more than you. Ethically, I'm like, that's a no-brainer. That's easy.
Exactly.
You should do that.
Yeah, you're super nice.
I'm nice. I don't know. Why is that okay? That's what says
ethical and moral.
This is why we have that tort reform, because our lawyers have. I feel like most of it is because, like, our lawyers, we've gone down this rabbit hole of just, gloating about recovery and stuff like that. I feel like our reputation has sort of caused some of this on us. And so it's like, okay, we need to just do the right thing. But anyway, here we are.
How, Jim, do you see the injury law landscape changing in the next future? Let's say in the next 5, 10, 15 years. Will we see a decrease in garbage firms or more educated clients, or maybe both?
I have no reason to think anything will change anytime soon. There's been an onslaught of tort reform this year, and 8 sections, eight real sections of tort reform. Actually, there's other bills as well that affect funding companies, as you know.
Yes,
B69 and all that. I think tort reform will get more extensive. And my only hope with any tort form is that it limits garbage law firms or runners from entering the industry, but nothing that I've seen is going to eliminate any of that. I think the only tort form that I've seen just makes recovery against insurance companies a little bit harder. But I don't think that's really going to change anything as far as what you and me are trying to help people do and stuff. So I don't. What I see things happening more of a okay with the law practice, and there's going to be more of a reliance on automation and AI with stuff like medical records and things like that. But I don't, as far as what we're able to recover, will things get better or worse with going up against insurance companies? I think it's going to be adversarial as always, and I think technology, no matter what happens in technology, we are going to learn to embrace it and adapt and do all that stuff.
So, I love AI. Yeah. One of my new loves is AI. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's about time for us, unfortunately, to wrap it up today. What do you wish more people knew about injury law in general that may surprise them?
I wish they knew to ask more questions. Yeah. I wish they knew that there's not just the billboards, the commercials. There are humans that are lawyers that deeply care about like what people are going through. We want the best for people, and that we're doing this because I don't know. I'm not going to sound all sanctimonious and say it's some greater calling, because I mean, like, let's be honest. I mean, I enjoy what I do, and of course I enjoy the, way, but I just want people to know that, there are the good guys out there, and just it's not that hard to find the good guys. Someone calls you on your podcast, they find you. You only know good lawyers. You only interview in this podcast. You only interview outstanding lawyers. I listen to 5-year podcast.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. You did. I love it. Thank you.
Sure. But no, I know Moses Kim's a good friend of mine. Amanda Hall is a great friend of mine. Great people.
Yes.
So just, I don't know, there's good guys out there. They're not hard to find. If you're listening to this, then you're going to be fine.
Yes. And another good guy, Jim Paisley. Make sure you look him up. That was so great again to have you, Jim, on my show. I hope our discussion about the good, the bad, and the garbage firms and navigation of the injury law, or the underbelly of injury law, was informative and educational. And as promised, here's a fun pop question for you, my friend. You ready?
Yeah. Okay, that's great.
All right, let's do it. Let's do the little cheer. Here we go. Mm-hmm. When people think of you and your work in the future, what do you think they'll remember the most about you?
Yeah, hear about them.
That's wonderful. I love it. Again, that was attorney Jim Paisley, founder and managing partner of Paisley Law, LLC in Decatur, Georgia. I want to thank you all for listening and watching our episode today. But before we let Jim go, if people need to find you or have any questions for you or need any of your experience and tips, how can they find you?
Email me, jane@paisleylaw.com, or Instagram, better call Jim. There you go. And that's it.
Okay. And do you want to share your social media? Do you have any social media? Do you have
Instagram, Better Call Jim. That's probably the best way.
Better Call Jim. Okay. I didn't know that. So I'm going to look that up right now.
Better-call-Jim.
Okay. Good to know. Yeah. Thank you. Sure. For more tips and tricks on legal funding and personal injury law and medicine related topics, follow me, download, like, and subscribe for It's Time for More Injury Funding podcast on several podcast platforms worldwide, including, of course, YouTube and Spotify and everything else. And follow More Injury Funding on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Pinterest, YouTube, Google business profile, my website at moreinjuryfunding.com. I can't wait to see you, my dear listeners and viewers, at my next upcoming episode. Until then, be well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura.